Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to my presentation. Today, I'd like to present to you about first chapter of the book David Copperfield, written by Charles Dickens. Okay, let's see.
My father died before I was born. One evening soon after his death, my mother was sitting by the fire feeling very sad. She looked up and saw Miss Betsy outside the garden fence. Miss Betsy was my father's aunt. Her real name was Miss Trotwood. Betsy Trotwood lived with one servant in a cottage near the sea. She had always been fond of my father, but she was angry with him when he married my mother. My mother saw Miss Trotwood at the window, so she hurried to open the door. "You are Mrs. Copperfield, aren't you?" "Yes, please come in," said my mother. Miss Betsy walked in, and they both sat down. My mother suddenly began to cry. "Oh, oh," said Miss Betsy, "don't do that." But my mother went on crying. Miss Betsy took her face in her hands. "Why," she cried, "you are only a baby yourself. Have some tea. What's the name of your girl?" "I call her Peggy." Miss Betsy called Peggy and made her bring some tea. "Now," said Miss Trotwood, "your baby must be a girl. You must name the girl Betsy Trotwood Copperfield. I shall be her friend. Do you know anything about taking care of a house and a baby?" "Not much," said my mother. "I wish I knew more." And she started to cry again. "Don't do that. You'll make yourself ill, and that will be bad for the baby." Peggy came in. She saw how ill my mother was and called the doctor. He arrived and went upstairs to my mother. Hours passed. Then he came downstairs. "Well, doctor, how is she?" said Miss Trotwood. "Mrs. Copperfield is quite comfortable," said the doctor. "I mean the baby. How is she?" "It's a boy," said the doctor. My aunt did not say a word. She walked straight out of the house and never came back. And that is how David Copperfield was born. The earliest memories that I have are my mother with her pretty hair and youthful shape, and Peggy with no shape at all, and very dark eyes and red cheeks like apples. My mother and I were both a little afraid of Peggy. Peggy and I were sitting one night by the fire in the sitting room. I had been reading to her. I was very tired, so tired that I could hardly keep my eyes open. I watched her needle passing quickly in and out of the cloth. Then I looked up at her face, which I thought beautiful. "Peggy," I said suddenly, "were you ever married?" "Why, David, whatever made you think of marriage?" she said so quickly that it quite woke me up. "Were you ever married?" I said. "You are a very beautiful woman, aren't you?" "Me beautiful? No, dear." There was a short silence. "Peggy," I said again, If you marry a person and the person dies, then you may marry another person. Isn't that right, Pegari? You may if you wish to, said Pegari, but I don't say that you should. People have different opinions. What is your opinion, Pegari? I said. Pegari did not answer. I read on. Then the doorbell rang. We went to the door to open it. There was my mother looking very pretty, and there was a gentleman with her. I had seen this gentleman before. It was the same gentleman who had walked home with her from church last Sunday. His name was Mr. Murdstone. My mother bent down and kissed me. "Ah," said the gentleman, "that is a very fortunate young man." He put his hand on my head. I put up my hand and took it away. "Dear boy," said the gentleman, "I'm not surprised that he loves you." He bent down and kissed my mother's hand. I was surprised and angry. "Good night, my dear boy," said the gentleman. "Good night," I said, but I would not shake hands with him. He turned to go, and as he did so, he looked at me. He did not look nice. I did not like that gentleman. We went into the sitting room. "I hope you have had a nice evening, Mrs. Copperfield," said Pegari, standing up very straight in the middle of the room. "Thank you," said my mother. "I have had a very nice evening. It is pleasant to see a stranger sometimes," said Pegari. "Yes," said my mother. I sat in a chair and fell asleep. When I woke up, I found Pegari and my mother talking, and there were tears in their eyes. "Mr. Copperfield would not have liked such a man," Pegari was saying. "Oh," cried my mother, "you'll make me mad. How dare you speak to me so unkindly? You know that I have no friends to turn to. That is a very good reason for speaking. You must not do it." "No," said Pegari. "If people like me, what can I do? I can't drive him away. I can't make myself ugly," said my mother. She came to me. "Dear David, she's saying that I don't love you, my own little David." "I did not say that," cried Pegari. You did. Am I a bad mother, David? Am I cruel and unkind?" "I do love you, don't I, David?" We began to cry together. I went to bed feeling very sad, and I fell asleep still crying. Next Sunday, the gentleman walked back from church with my mother. He came in to look at our flowers and asked if he might have one. He came again and again. I became used to seeing the gentleman, but I did not like him. One morning I was with my mother in the front garden when Mr. Murdstone came along on a horse. He said that he was going to see some friends who were in a sailing boat at Lowestoft. I was sent upstairs to Pegary. Pegary saw my mother and Mr. Murdstone walking up and down in the road. She looked very angry. She brushed my hair very hard and hurt me. Perhaps it was the next day, or perhaps it was a little later when Pegary asked me to go with her to visit her brother. My mother was out. Pegary and I were sitting in front of the fire. She looked at me several times and opened her mouth as if she were going to speak. Then she shut her mouth without speaking. "Master Davy," she said at last, "would you like to go along with me and stay for 2 weeks with my brother at Yarmouth?" "Is your brother a nice man, Pegary?" I asked. "Oh, yes," said Pegary. "There is the sea at Yarmouth, and boats and ships and fishermen and sand, and there is a boy called Heep for you to play with." "What will mother say?" I asked. "Oh, she will let us go. I'll ask her as soon as she comes home. She's going to stay with Mrs. Grapper, so we shall not be leaving her alone." So it was all arranged. The day soon came for our going. We were to go in the carrier's cart. I remember now how eager I was to leave my happy home. I remember how my mother stood kissing me at the gate. I cried at the thought of leaving my home. My mother cried too. When the cart began to move, my mother ran out of the gate and called to the driver to stop so that she might kiss me once more. I looked back and saw her standing in the road. I saw Mr. Murdstone go up to her. He seemed angry with her for crying because I was going away.
Thank you for joining me. Finally, please make sure subscribe, thumbs up, leave comment or feedback about this video and about something that needs to be changed. Thank you very much for being here.